Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, spoke in a sort of informal, what we call a gaggle here, a short time ago to reporters at the White House. She talked about President Trump remaining committed to diplomacy first, but a range of options, as she put it, remain on the table. She was speaking, of course, about the situation in Iran.
So we're seeing reports this evening that an Iranian drone, a suspected Iranian drone, has been shot down, the US military say, as it aggressively approached an American aircraft carrier in the Arabian Sea. A stealth fighter jet took off from the USS Abraham Lincoln warship and shot down the drone in self-defense to protect the aircraft carrier and its personnel. The ship was approximately 500 miles from the Iranian coast when the drone approached it with unclear intent. Let's bring in Niall Stanage, who is a White House columnist at The Hill. Niall, good evening to you.
Okay.
What more do we know of this suspected Iranian drone? It comes, of course, as the US has been mobilising some of its military power around and approaching Iran.
That's right, Kate. I mean, obviously there are rising tensions, to say the very least, between the US and Iran. In terms of the specifics, this was apparently an unmanned drone. The US is accusing it of acting aggressively or with unclear intent. Caroline Leavitt, the White House press secretary, spoke in a sort of informal, what we call a gaggle here, a short time ago to reporters at the White House. She talked about President Trump remaining committed to diplomacy first, but a range of options, as she put it, remain on the table. She was speaking, of course, about the situation in Iran writ large, although she did offer some of the comments that I just alluded to about this drone.
OK, all right. So we're just waiting for more information, but that is now being more widely reported in the United States. It comes, of course, as diplomats are arranging nuclear talks between Iran and the United States. I know that there are talks going on in Qatar between some officials on Thursday. And then on Friday, there is sort of a more rounded meeting, I suppose, where Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff, both advising Donald Trump, will be meeting with the Iranian foreign minister, I think it is, just off the top of my head. But the US and Iran are meeting to see if they can thrash something out, Niall.
Yes, that's right. And so far, and of course it is early days, early hours, but so far this drone matter doesn't appear to have demolished those talks. The point, I think, Kate, is that the President of the United States had, at the time when the protests in Iran were at their peak, suggested the US might sort of intervene on the protesters' side. That didn't happen when those protests were at their height, but then subsequently Trump talked on social media about the idea of somehow forcing Iran to entirely give up its nuclear program or give up its long-range weapons, or it wasn't precisely clear what he meant, but he was plainly seeking to create a new sense of momentum around some greater concessions from Iran on that broad topic of either nuclear development or armaments or both.
OK. We've also heard today that both Bill and Clinton and his wife Hillary Clinton, the former Secretary of State, former President, of course, Bill Clinton, have agreed to testify in the congressional investigation into the late sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. The pressure had been on them for quite some time. Why now? Why have they agreed to do it now, Niall?
Particularly because I think they have bowed to pressure here. Make a long story short, if you defy a congressional subpoena, you risk being brought up for contempt of Congress. And that, I think, seemed to be something that the Clintons were unwilling to do, although they had previously suggested that they would be willing to do that. They had talked about it being a time to fight what they see as a politicized investigation. Without getting too deep into the weeds of Congress, Kate, this issue of congressional subpoenas and ignoring them or obeying them is a very live issue in American politics. I mean, President Trump, for example, was subpoenaed during the time he was out of power. So perhaps his testimony was just sought, but in any event, he challenged the authority to bring him before Congress to talk about the events around January the 6th and never did appear in those kinds of ways. There are all sorts of debates about people selectively saying my enemies should comply with subpoenas, but I should not. And the Clintons are sort of in the middle of that scenario now.
OK, well, look, neither Bill or Hillary Clinton has been accused of any wrongdoing by survivors of Epstein's abuse. They've always denied knowledge of his sex offending. But I wonder whether we'll see any more information come to light after they testify to Congress. Thank you. Really good to speak to you. Niall Stanage, White House columnist at The Hill. We should say that Donald Trump has been entertaining the Colombian President Gustavo Petro at the White House today. We'll bring you an update on that. Thought it could provoke a thorny affair, but so far so quiet on that front.